Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Success is a Choice podcasting network. We'll get to our guest in just a moment, but I want to remind you that today's episode is made possible by freeleadershipworkshop.com, freeleadershipworkshop.com. If you are a coach, administrator, educator, leader, there is probably a webinar or a virtual session for you. So freeleadershipworkshop.com, freeleadershipworkshop.com. Go ahead and check that out. Well, today, our guest is Adam Johnson, and some of you may know him a little bit more as the Lectern Guy or the Podium Guy. There's a lot of talk about January 6th, J6ers. You get this, it's very polarizing in the news, and Adam is one of probably the most famous or infamous people from the January 6th, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol. He was known as the Lectern Guy. So Adam Johnson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jamie. Been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I appreciate you being on, and this is a little different in terms of, you know, the guests that we typically have on. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a college president, and I said, "Hey, we're gonna have this guy on. You know who this guy is?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you have any questions for him, or what should I ask him?" And he said, "What on God's green earth was he thinking?" Okay. Well, that's an interesting way to start an interview, but I think a lot of people, when you watch NBC, you watch ABC, CBS, or whether it's Fox or CNN, you get a certain narrative, or people tell you something about January 6th. Well, we have a guy here that was right in the middle of it, went to prison, was convicted of some crimes on January 6th. So I think a lot of people are thinking, what were you thinking? So walk us through kind of because you're a normal guy in terms of, you didn't grow up in the Young Republicans, party. You didn't grow up, going to marches and all this kind of stuff. You're just a normal guy who I believe really didn't even vote much. And all of a sudden you're in jail for, January 6th crimes.
Yeah, it's a very broad stroke question. What was I thinking? So I guess a lot of things. As you said, I'm not really, was not politically active at all growing up. I grew up actually in the theater. Both my parents are musicians. So I grew up with a lot of left-leaning friends, right-leaning friends. I was in church, did some worship pastor work, some youth pastor work. So just a regular guy, married to a woman for coming on 14 years, 5 kids. I like cooking meat on the weekend. Very, very normal, very uninteresting, really. I think my voting record also, I think it says that I voted one time when I turned 18, and not registered as Republican or Democrat. I was registered my entire life as independent. Didn't vote for Trump in 16 because I looked at both of the options and I said, well, I don't think a reality TV star is the best thing for the nation. And I really don't trust this woman over here. So I didn't vote at all. 2020 came and I did vote for Trump. I'm very independent, libertarian mindset. I don't like war. Again, I have 5 sons and I like what Trump did. We didn't go to war. We didn't start new ones. So for me, that was one of the big selling points. As far as showing up January 6th, I had questions. I had concerns. I think a lot of people did. And I think if you look, at the news coming from the left and the right, I mean, everyone had concerns about what happened. We had COVID lockdowns. We had, the country was just in a place it had never been. We had multiple states changing how voting worked and how voting had always been done. So people were concerned. It's the first Trump rally that I'd ever been to. I'd never gone to a Trump rally in my life, but I heard this was the end of an era. This was going to be the last one he's going to do. Lost the election, so we're going to get together. It's going to be a historical moment. So I showed up. When I got there, it was God, well over 100,000 people. This was not a small event. So when they tell you, it was a riot. I mean, that many people look like that. But as far as on the ground, what it looked like, it looked like people exiting a stadium who were walking towards the Capitol. They're not running, they're not pushing people over. It's just a nonchalant walk. We're going down to the Capitol. That's where the next protest is going to happen. So we're going to go down there. By time I got there, police barricades had already been crossed. People were just standing around on the steps. Nothing was really going on. We were singing the national anthem, and then they started gassing us. And again, I'm not on the front lines here, so I'm not sure, who started what, who did what first, but I'm just in the middle of it. So we get tear gassed. The tear gas can hits a few feet from my feet, and it pushes the people in front of me towards the police, and the people behind me away from the police, because that's what it's supposed to do. It worked exactly how it's supposed to work. Mm-hmm. And then pushing and shoving started. There were a handful of people who were very stupid. I don't think it's good to hit cops ever, and that's a bad thing. And there were a handful of people, the majority of them, 95, 96% of them actually, who just walked into a building and left. And that's verifiable because you can look at the charges that were brought up on every single person who was arrested. Most of them are nonviolent trespassing, picketing, parading misdemeanors. So when they sell it as this giant, the worst day in history, this horrible, violent, 27 people died. They didn't. 4 people died. And all of them were protesters. It's not how it's being sold. I compare it to, again, if you're at a football game and, it's a crowded stadium, I think most stadiums hold about 50 to 70,000 people. And if someone's having a fight in the bathroom, are you responsible for that? No, you showed up to watch a game. You showed up to do the thing you are allowed to do, and someone else acted stupid.
So you flew up there, or you drove up there? You live in Florida. You went up there with a couple buddies.
I went up there with one good friend of mine. We do jujitsu together. Okay. Nice guy. So we were talking a couple weeks before the event happened, and I'm like, "Is it crazy to want to go up there?" And he's like, "No, let's get a plane ticket. Let's go." So we bought a plane ticket and flew up there.
Yeah, and like you said, historic event. Kind of, hey, this is Trump's last stand, or this is his last rally that he's going to have, and yeah, he does become, almost, whether you love him or hate him, he does become a rock star. Like he's a celebrity, and like you said, hundreds of thousands of people there. But when you got to the Capitol, it wasn't like what Trump said, go rush the Capitol, or
no,
what
he said. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and peacefully and patriotically have our voices heard. That was his rhetoric. And while he was speaking, people were already attacking the Capitol. People were already shoving police, tearing down barricades. So this is not something, he never said go there and go start a riot. That wasn't his rhetoric. And if it was, I'm sure there were a handful of people that would have. But people were already upset before Trump said go there or not. And you can see that on video in real time.
So when we work, a lot of people watching this work with students, or are you trying to get students to make right choices or the right decision? Or if if you're in a situation, try to get yourself out of that situation to a degree. So you're seeing some people attacking police officers, or you're seeing people do some things that they shouldn't do. And obviously you didn't join into that with the violence part, but what are you thinking in terms of, all right, I see these people doing some stuff that I know is not good. All right, police are firing tear gas at us. So obviously this is not a great situation. Did you ever consider just going back to your hotel room, or was it, hey, I can just go around to the side door where, hey, we're not going to join in with this violence? What was kind of your thought process in that situation?
It is, I think it's twofold. It's definitely the latter of those two options. Those aren't my people. That's not what I stand behind. So I did leave that group. Have you been to the Capitol grounds?
Yes.
It is a massive building. It is a giant building, giant property. So walking away from them was actually a pretty easy thing to do, because again, it's a very large building. So I didn't want to leave because, again, what's happening in front of me, it's almost you're almost in shock. You're like, oh my gosh, this is happening, and I've never seen anything like this. And it's like looking at it. Everyone slows down to see a car accident on the interstate. Everyone does, even though you've seen 100 of them. Well, this is the first time I've seen something like this. So I definitely I slowed down and I looked, I watched, and I walked away from it. I noticed people were walking inside through open doors. And I thought, well, I've seen a dozen protests in that building, the past handful of years. So I guess that's where the protest is going. So I followed the protesters inside. Didn't break down a door, didn't break a window, just strolled inside.
So once you got inside, that's when the viral picture or what you ultimately got in trouble for, I believe, is here on the screen. If you're listening on audio, you can just look it up, the Lectern Guy, and see the video. But we've got the picture of you viral, carrying, was it Nancy Pelosi's lectern, her podium?
Technically, it is the Speaker of the House's lectern. It changes possession, but during the time it was in her use. So there's a lot to this. It's actually kind of boring story. This was sitting out in the open. This was not in someone's office. I didn't break a door down to get this. It actually never left the building as well. I moved it about 20 yards for a photo opportunity. I've never been inside the Capitol before. I saw it, and I thought that would make a great prop for a picture, and it did. So I picked it up. I walked through the velvet ropes with it, saw some photographers, smiled and waved at them, sat it down, gave a short speech, and left.
You gave a short speech.
I did.
A motivational speech.
A motivational speech. Yes. Very in the vein of Thomas Massey. Very much so.
Well, and looking at this picture, and especially for those people listening to this on audio, there aren't many people. Is that in the rotunda?
That's in the rotunda. Mm-hmm.
There are not many people around. So your speech was not heard by a lot of people.
No, but I think it would have fixed a lot of things if they'd followed it. But
That's right.
I'm just one man.
It wasn't quite a Trumpian-esque speech.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is what you got nailed for. All right. So you pick up the podium, the Speaker of the House's podium, the lectern. Mm-hmm. You move it a little bit. You have a speech. You don't take it out of the Capitol, so you don't take the souvenir home with you. What do you do after you give your speech?
I walked around for a little bit. There wasn't much going on. Again, I'd never been in the building. People are just taking selfies. It looked very much like an unguided museum tour. People were just, I'm not joking, just strolling around taking pictures of the artwork. It's actually a beautiful building, and I recommend everyone go visit it during visiting hours. It's a great place.
Good life hack in general.
Exactly.
Visit places during the time you're supposed to visit. So, okay. So with that being said, was there a part of you that knew that, all right, I'm probably going to get in trouble here. I was trespassing or something there. Did you know that kind of you did something that you might get in trouble for? And when was that? And what was your thought in terms of how bad this is going to be for you?
Well, I left the building. I had found another small group that was walking down towards the Senate chambers where they were counting the votes. I had assumed everyone had already been evacuated from the building because this is an hour or two into the protest. And I asked someone next to me, like, hey, what's over here? Because again, never been in the building. And he's like, oh, that's where they're counting the votes. And I said, they're still here? And he said, yeah, they're still here. I'm like, well, I think I'm gonna go home. So I found an officer, very nice guy. It's like, hey, I'm lost, don't know how to leave, can't get back, can't go out the same way I came in because people are flooding through. How do I get out of here? So he gave me directions. I followed the directions, left the building. My phone had died inside. So I had it charging on battery packs in my backpack. I turned it on about 20, 30 minutes after I left the building, and I couldn't use my phone because there were so many messages and texts coming in from friends, family, loved ones, of all different nature. Some of them, oh my gosh, what have you done? Your photos everywhere. It was very quick. I was actually getting recognized on the street on the way back to Georgetown. So within an hour of leaving the building, I was getting recognized. I knew it was going to be an issue when I turned on the news, and they were my picture was everywhere on CNN, MSNBC, Fox. It was just everywhere. Like, well, I'm going to call a couple of my Leo friends and see what I should do about this. So I got a bunch of friends down here that work for the sheriff's office, great guys, And like, well, you should probably get an attorney because they're going to want to talk to you. So got a hold of a good friend of mine, got a hold of some attorneys, and we had them hired within, gosh, I want to say 24 hours, 36 hours of the event. They put the city on lockdown that night. Instead of flying out on Friday, I rented a car, drove home. I called the AUSA, which is the Assistant United States Attorney's Office, before I even left DC, and told them, hey, it's me. I know you know it's me. I've been doxxed online. I'm not fleeing. I rented this car. I'm going back to Florida, my home. Anything, here's my cell phone number. So I left them all of these messages, not trying to run or hide or anything. Just wanted to make sure they knew, like, hey, I didn't steal anything. I just left the building. It's still there. Friday, I got arrested, and they brought up charges. It was a felony theft of government property, even though I didn't steal anything. And they knew I didn't steal anything because they had it within 20 minutes of me leaving it. It's on video. I got a misdemeanor for trespassing and a misdemeanor for violent entry.
So those were the charges you were brought up on.
Yes.
And then
go ahead.
So you ended up doing a plea bargain.
I did. We got the felony dropped, and we got the felony theft dropped because, again, I didn't steal anything. And then we got the misdemeanor violent entry because there was a video of me just walking through doors, just open doors. I ended up going to federal prison for a misdemeanor trespassing charge, which is just unheard of. It's never happened in the history of federal courts. So I set a record. It was
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Should get a trophy for it or something. $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, a year of supervised release, and I couldn't leave the Middle District of Florida for almost 3 years.
So when we're seeing these on TV, we're watching the nightly news, we're seeing people being brought, I believe, and obviously I can be fact checked on this, 1,400, 1,500 people charged or convicted. I'm not sure what that is, but a lot of people were charged at least. And we're watching this kind of stuff. And then we see all the J6ers, the people there on January 6th, lumped kind of into one, hey, you're an insurrectionist, or you're violent, or you're this or that. We're talking 3 criminal charges for you, 2 of them misdemeanors, and then you eventually plead down. You hired a couple lawyers, and I've heard you say $100,000 or maybe more.
$100,000 out of pocket. We were actually not allowed to raise any money or support for the attorneys. It was part of my plea agreement. We had raised like $1,500 on a GoFundMe, and they said we had to give it all back. So it was $100,000 hit.
And I know you can't speak for all the people that were charged on January 6th, but with you, what was the plea deal, or when you're going through this, is it more, hey, I'm kind of scared of what can happen to me, or is it more of a, hey, this is just strategy, because yes, I was there. Yes, they got me dead to rights on this, or this, and it's just a strategy. I've got to plead down. I got to do this. How was that whole process going through the plea deal? To maybe stay out of prison more, or maybe roll the dice and just get probation, which is what would typically happen.
Yep. Typically, it's actually just a fine. When the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were going on to nominate him, they stormed the SCOTUS building, and I think they each had like a $50 fine, which is what the federal courts put to it. Again, so I could kvetch for a very long time about this, but I'll keep it brief. As far as the strategy, my attorneys were fantastic. David Bigney and Dan Eckhart, I cannot recommend them enough. Hopefully never need them, but if you do need them, those are the people. They were very honest up front. They said, your best deal here is going to be the felony. It's the only real thing you can hope for. They do have you dead to rights. That's your picture. Dan actually was quoted saying, look, I'm not a magician. Like, you obviously have a picture of my client here, but the best thing we can do is make sure that the correct information, the story of what actually happened, is told. That is the real win. And in DC, they have a 97% conviction rate, and they also vote 97% Democrat. And with all of these January 6 cases, all of them had to remain in DC as well. So taking your case to trial, you are not going to get a jury of your peers. You're going to get a jury of, 97% Democrat who do not like you and watch, one set of news stories, and they're going to go in there with bias. And we have seen that with every single J6er who has gone to court, except for, I want to say, one or two where the judge threw it out on because there was no standing. But the majority of them are getting decade-long sentences. So
Now,
go ahead.
But your trial was or your proceedings, was it all in Florida though?
It was Zoom because of COVID, but the actual sentencing, we flew to DC because I wanted to stand in front of the judge as he sentenced me.
Okay.
So you go decorum.
Yeah. So you go away 75 days, 70 some days.
It was 71 days in federal prison. I already spent 4 in state during the first arrest. They arrest you on a Friday, so you wait all weekend long in isolation. And then the first 17 days of federal prison was in isolation as well. So a total of 21 days in solitary for a misdemeanor trespassing charge. Again, this is not standard operating procedure, but it's what they did.
So this is not, you're a father of 5 boys, married, you said for 14 years. This is, for lack of a better phrase, you're a normal guy, normal family, this kind of stuff. How is it going through this process with a family? They go to school, you're in a community. How is it during this process, kind of walking around with the scarlet letter?
Everything is a learning opportunity. Everything has the potential to be a building block. I think when people toss stones, you can build a house out of it if you work hard enough. And where I'm at is my family is very strong. We talk about everything openly and honestly. We don't hide things from each other. It's a very open communication, platform in our household. When everything went down, I came home, hugged the wife. We had a very brief conversation about what the future might look like. They were talking potentially a 20-year sentence when it initially came out. This is what they were discussing. And I told her, look, I understand if you don't want to stay around because that's 20 years of your life. You're still young. I won't rob you of something that I took from you. So she told me, you're being completely stupid. That's not what a vow means. I said, I marry you forever. And I meant it. So we hugged each other. We brought the kids downstairs. We explained, hey, Dad made a mistake. There's going to be some repercussions for this. And no matter what happens, Dad loves you, Mom loves you, and we're going to make it work. But there was that underlying fear of not being able to teach my kids how to drive cars. The underlying fear of not being at their weddings or there for the birth of my first grandson or granddaughter. And that was difficult to deal with. But I look at where I am now, and I'm thankful every day because I am not in prison for 3 years. And I got a lot of flack from a lot of other J6ers because I did take a plea deal. And what I try to explain to them is you can't help your family and you can't help your cause from behind a prison cell. You can't do that. You can't do it from behind bars. People will give you hurrahs, like, oh, they stood up and, they didn't take those charges. But what good can you do when you're behind bars? You will be forgotten about. And the news cycle's on a 2-week spin. They will forget your name. In the meantime, I've spent the past 4 years raising money for people who have, fathers and mothers who are in prison because these kids did nothing wrong and someone should be taking care of them.
Well, one of the ways that you're raising money for this, like you say, you can't help your family when you're behind bars, but you're trying to help some of these families who have people behind bars, and you've kind of tongue in cheek found a way to, if anyone follows you online, Lectern Leader, a lot of the stuff you put is good practical advice, like meat, cooking meat, and it motivates us to be better with our meat game. But some of it is also very sarcastic. But some of the things that you do, you are passionate about helping people who helping families. And one of the things that you're doing is you've taken up the woodworking trait, or a hobby. And so you're making little or other podiums and selling those and raising money for people.
Yes, sir.
Where did that idea come from? And I don't think that you grew up as a carpenter, grew up as a woodworker.
No. So musician by trade. I have a bachelor's in psychology. So a little bit of everything, cooking, obviously lots of different jobs, but I wanted to install crown molding in my home that I bought a few years ago. Had never used a miter saw in my life, failed miserably. I mean, it is awful. So I took that as well, I guess I have to get better. So I've been woodworking now for good almost 10 years now, and just picking up new lessons, new hobbies with it. And the lectern came to be because, well, it's the thing I'm kind of infamous for, and I knew that we could do some good with them. So I build these. I got one here. So I build these little lecterns.
And it says what? Take a stand?
It says take a stand. Yes.
Tongue in cheek. Yes.
Tongue in cheek. And it's they go for anywhere from $700 to $1,500 was the highest bid. But these go like 100% goes directly to the families. God has been good to us. We are well taken care of. We can't. Our kids are healthy. We're well fed. We have a roof over our heads. So we just send 100% of everything to the families that need it.
Well, and one of the stipulations was of your sentencing was you can't make any money off your name, image, and likeness for 5 years. And a lot of people watching this or listening to this are college coaches, and that's all the rage. College athletes are making money now on name, image, and likeness. You're the opposite. You're not allowed to make any money off of your name, image, and likeness.
That is correct. They wanted a lifetime ban on it, and we got it talked down to a 5-year stint. And again, God has been so good to us. We had just everything worked out for us, and could not be more thankful. But we talked to the AUSA, and I was like, well, look, it doesn't say I can't give all my money away. So do I have permission to build these things and sell them and give 100% of the proceeds to families that are in need? And what I'm doing with this is it's not just J6 families. We're going to extend this to if you have a parent who's in prison, someone should take care of these kids, because you should be indifferent about it. Whether you're right or left, a lot of people are in prison who shouldn't be in prison. And that's a talking point I think most of us can get behind. There were guys in there who were serving a 10-year sentence for having cocaine. Not an advocate of cocaine. Don't think it's a great thing. Definitely think you should avoid it. But 10 years away from your family has ruined generations of families.
Well, and whether you're a Democrat or Republican, independent, libertarian, no matter where you're at with that, I think a lot of people feel like, sometimes there are people behind bars that either shouldn't be there at all or their sentence is too rough. I think there's a lot of people that also think of prison reform. Hey, why are we sending people to prison? And a lot of people will talk about, hey, they shouldn't come out of prison worse than when they went in. And I actually have heard you talk about this, that there's not a lot of rehabilitation going on in prison.
There isn't. There's an opportunity to give these people skills while they're there. And a lot of it really comes down to if they had a good job where they could go to a 9 to 5, they would probably be a lot better off, because anyone who has ever climbed out of a hole, who has climbed out of debt, they understand what it feels like to be there, and getting out of there is the best feeling, the best high you'll ever have. And you'll want to chase that instead. And there's so much studies and so much research that have gone into this that have shown that you can reduce recidivism if you give someone an opportunity to become more. But prison does not offer that. These classes that the federal government says they're paying to have hosted and rented there, they don't exist. They're not there, but who's going to complain?
Yeah. And you mentioned when you sat down or had a discussion with your kids that, hey, dad made a mistake, that kind of stuff. Well, that was what you had said. Now, I'd like to unpack that just a little bit, because there are people that I've seen online or people that have criticized you or other people in terms of, hey, you appeared to be contrite, you appeared to be apologetic during this process, but now, since it's been a year or two, now you're almost embracing it, and we just joked about the tongue in cheek. You're making lecterns and you're making stands, podiums. Now, how do you reconcile that? It seems like it's a paradox, or it seems like it's hypocritical or inconsistent. It seems like this, hey, well, all right, you made a mistake. I admit I made a mistake. Well, what did you make the mistake for? But now you're embracing it. How do you weigh all that?
It's a great question. So what is the goal of prison, right? What is the goal of prison? Is it to strictly punish? Is it to reform? And when you're done with prison, when you're done with your sentence and you come back into society, is that the moment we accept you again and say, the slate is clean, welcome back? And I think I think for me during the time, yes, there was contrition. I understand that, I'm in front of a federal judge. I did something to be here. Whether I believe the sentencing was fair or in line with what standard practices and sentencing guidelines typically result in, I could talk about that and probably disagree with it. But at the end of it, it's been 4 years. How long should I fall on my sword until I can say, look, that was 4 years ago, and this is how much contrition, how much regret and remorse should I really carry for a misdemeanor trespassing charge? How guilty should I feel about that? What timeline would you put me on? Because the federal government said 75 days was long enough for me to learn my lesson. And it's been 4 years. So I think it's okay for me to make a joke. I think it's okay for me to smile again. And I think it's okay for me to be open and honest about, what actually happened and where we should go from here.
So when people will look at your, they'll Google you or find you online, Adam Johnson, Lectern Guy or Podium Guy or whatever, almost always it comes up, he's unemployed or he has a criminal background.
Uh-huh.
He obviously I'm leading you into something here, but you being unemployed, that doesn't really speak to what you do, and having a criminal background really doesn't speak to your background.
This is true. I always tell people, if you ask if a woman is a stay-at-home parent, it is the hardest job in the world. If a man does it, he's unemployed. This is just kind of the culture that we live in. We have 5 sons. I was in college when my kids were young. I have a 3.9 GPA, but my kids were being raised by daycare workers. And we could see it coming out in the personalities. We could see them growing distant from us. And we were fortunate enough to be able to look at each other and say, look, one of us should stay home, raise our kids while they're young, give them that nurturing they need. And when they get older, go back to college, finish your degree, find your career. And that is what we did. So when they say unemployed, well, I did have a carpentry business. I did build custom furniture for people. You can go to people's homes and see the things that I have built. I built my own home from the inside out. Again, what does unemployed even mean? Does it mean just doesn't work or doesn't make money?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own business, which means I'm either self-employed or unemployed, depending on the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. But your wife is a doctor.
She is.
And you have 5 kids. And if, unfortunately, if the roles were reversed, at least in our thoughts, if you're the doctor and you have 5 kids, well, then, like you said, it's not unusual for the wife to stay at home. And we all know if we stay at home with 1 kid for long enough, that's a full-time job, just 1 kid.
Well, what's $100,000 really going to make a difference? Like, am I willing to trade in being able to make a home cooked meal for my family every single night and enjoy dinner with them, have a conversation, ask about their days? Is that worth $100,000 to me? Is it, the PTO alone? Imagine this. I have 5 kids. That's 5 eye appointments. That's 5 dentists. That's 5 doctors. And 4 of them have braces. That's also 4 orthodontist appointments. That alone is a month worth of appointments. That's all of my PTO if I had a regular 9-to-5 job. When am I supposed to go on vacation with my family? Right?
Yeah.
When should I? Right? So we now have it where if my wife wants to take a week off, guess what? Hey, I'm off that week as well. So I don't think sacrificing my family, the closeness that we have, the relationship that we have, and the adventures that we've had for $100,000 a year, it's not worth it to me. It's a horrible investment.
And as far as your past record, they brought up you got busted for marijuana when you were like 19. You're in your 40s now, and I think they brought up a couple speeding tickets, which
they did.
which I don't bring that up to be like, okay, well, we need to feel sorry for this guy. But I talk a lot sometimes about, it doesn't matter if it's news, if it's family, if it's coaching, if it's education, whatever. Sometimes we're not maybe lied to, but people withhold facts, or they make something out to be more extreme than it is, or they shape a narrative, and depending on what their agenda is. And so sometimes we need to be very wise and discerning about the stuff that we take in terms of, okay, well, he's been convicted of something before, or they put a word or a title on somebody, and we should sometimes look into that a little bit more and not just take things at face value.
I think people can only extrapolate an idea with the information they're presented. And I think it's important to get as much. And again, I'm not even upset with these people. I understand that, they have a narrative. They've read these things. They've seen these things. I'm not even upset with them. That's okay. But I'm a pretty reasonable guy. If you have a question, I'll answer it to the best of my ability. I mean, yes, I did smoke a marijuana when I was 19 with my friends. I did. But so did Obama, and he was president. So I don't understand, what did he also do cocaine? God, I think George Bush did as well. So again, maybe I'm qualified to be the president. I don't know.
Also, now you're trying to get us booted off of YouTube with fake news or whatever, talking about Obama. No, but
it's in his memoirs. He wrote it.
For those of us that read. But what we do this all the time. I run the red light because I have a real reason for having to be somewhere. If you run a red light, it's because you're careless or you're selfish. If my team cheats, well, it wasn't as bad. If your team cheats, well, you're a bunch of cheaters. If you're on the wrong side of the tribe, well, you're a druggie. You've had run-ins with the law before. If you're on the right side, if you're on their side, well, you used to be a youth minister. You're a churchgoer, or whatever. You shape whatever it is. And I just like people to have an open mind or use their mind, and actually critically think about some things, because sometimes we're fed things on news channels more than just Fox or CNN.
I agree. I think it's because the news cycle is so quick. It is 2 weeks in and out. And I had 2 weeks, and then my story is written. I have a Wikipedia page now, and I can't get those things corrected. There's a lot of misinformation on there, but what am I going to do? That's what people are going to read. But I encourage everyone, look, if you have an idea about someone, go listen to what the exact opposite people say. You may learn some facts that maybe reconcile, or at least expand your ability to forgive, and maybe tolerate a little bit more of them and their personality and their life.
Well, obviously going away to prison is not on your bucket list when you were a youngster. But besides going to prison, and besides probably losing some friends and family over this, I understand you lost your PlayStation account, which has got to be pretty high up on, just an inconvenience in life.
It was. I don't play a lot of video games these days anymore. And if I do, it's at like 2:00 in the morning, because that's my time, hang out with the family. If they go to bed, and maybe I'll play some Call of Duty or God of War or something. But yes, I did lose a PlayStation account that I had since I was a kid, from from PlayStation 3. So 15-year account, deleted, gone, all my trophies.
Well, I know how much my 15-year-old spends on Roblox and Fortnite and all that kind of stuff and if his account went away, it would be like so many hours and money wasted. Crazy.
Yep. Everything's digital now. There's Voodoo has digital movies, or everything we do is digital. You pay your $20, it's in your digital library. What happens if you can't access that library? Did you ever actually own anything? So I'm a huge fan of physical media. I think we should go back to that.
So have you had any interactions with President Trump?
I have not.
So has anybody like from his administration or anything reached out to you
No.
that you're,
Nope.
Now,
but I've been
You've been lampooned. You've been lampooned on like Saturday Night Live. John Krasinski played you from The Office. Famous, world's most handsome man or beautiful man, whatever, sexiest man. That's got to be like a backhanded compliment. Like he's criticizing you for who he plays, but then it's the world's sexiest man playing you. So that's got to be a good thing on one hand. But has there been any, on the flip side, famous people reaching out to you, being like, man, I just want to would love to talk to you, or just, hey, what you did, sorry you had to go away to prison or whatever?
Insofar as movie stars, no. But insofar as, popular podcasters, I met with Glenn Beck last week in Phoenix. So there have been a lot of larger influencers that I've got to meet. Donut Operator, the AK guy. I've met Kyle Rittenhouse, who is, some people like him, some people hate him, but for all intents and purposes, he is a historical icon. There is it's been a lot. Tim Pool, been all over. But most people, when they hear the story and they actually understand what it actually was. Like, man, that's actually terrible that happened to you. And I'm like, well, more terrible things happen to less terrible people. So I think it's important for us to keep listening to stories.
Yeah. Now, is there a support group for J6ers, for January 6 people? I mean, do you guys get together? Is like the shaman, the guy who wore that big hat with the horns or whatever, who's probably the most infamous guy other than you, but do you guys get together, hang out, have barbecues, cook meat together?
I actually just met, his name is Jacob Chansley. I met him for the first time in Phoenix 2 weeks ago. Just very, very energetic guy, very, very positive. Gave me a big hug, got a picture together, chit-chatted for a little bit. But there are actually a lot of support groups for J6ers. There are so many of us that there has to be, right? We can't just have one person that manages everything. There's a group of people who actually pray outside of the DC jail every single night for the people who are still held there. There's a guy in New Jersey who's been held in prison for over 3 years, and he still hasn't had his charges brought to him, which is unconstitutional. That's a violation of so many amendments. But there are a lot of support groups for people who need help. There have been a handful of suicides, which is, I just think, a tragedy. I don't care what you think about these people or not. It's always a tragedy when a mother and a father lose their son or their daughter. So there are a lot of people who are helping, and one of them is the J6 Prayer Network. I'll put a tweet on my page where I can list a bunch of people that are doing work. So if anyone's hearing this or knows anyone who needs help, it's a very good group of people who will pray for you, listen to you, talk to you, and they're doing God's work.
So what is probably the most important question of the day? What's on the grill? What's your meat of the week, meat of the recipe? Give us some tangible thing for when we're grilling out here upcoming the upcoming year in 2025.
Ooh, I've actually got a brisket on the smoker right now. I started at midnight. My brisket, I do a pretty darn good job with it. The trick is you have to inject the flat. So the point's got a lot of fat on it. You can carve it up, take a lot of the fat out. I just fat score the flat, and I'll inject it from both sides with a little bit of bacon fat, because that'll really help keep some of that moisture in there, because again, not a lot of fat. Also super important, you have to double wrap your brisket when it hits the stall at 155, 160. Let it go to 202, take it, wrap it a couple towels, put it in a cooler, let it sit for a minimum 3 hours. It'll help reabsorb all the juice, so when you slice into it, it's not bleeding out all over the table.
Okay. Do you use a special seasoning? Do you have a seasoning or a sauce or a rub that you would recommend?
So I find the rub to be kind of inconsequential. It's the binder for me. There is a mustard that is made with datil pepper. Datil pepper grows in 2 places in the whole world. One of them, St. Augustine. Okay. And it's got the perfect amount of heat, a little spicier than a Serrano, but not as spicy as a habanero. So I take half of that and half a Dijon mustard, 50-50 ratio, slather the whole thing, salt, pepper, paprika, and onion powder, and coffee grounds, a little bit of bitterness.
Well, it sounds like when the name, image, and likeness thing is up for you, whenever that is in the future, you should probably make your own seasoning.
That could be a lot of fun.
That could be. You could have a whole line of merch, which I'm sure you've thought of, or smarter people than me have already thought of that for you. But
well, there is a charity website going up in January where there will be hats, t-shirts, stickers for laptops, small things, all price budgets. Because again, we want to make sure the kids are taken care of. You want to solve things, we have to be generationally mindset. We can't just worry about the next 4 years. We have to worry about the next 30.
I got you. Well, we appreciate your time, appreciate your honesty. I think I know for me personally, but other people watching this, I'm sure this is the first time we've actually talked to or heard from in some sort of long form conversation, someone that was there on January 6th. We hear about it on the news a lot of times, but so I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate your honesty. And so thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate the opportunity to be heard. And thanks for everyone who took the time to listen. Awesome.
So for everybody watching this, share this with your aunt, your uncle, your mom, your dad, whoever. Share this with somebody that they might not agree, or they may agree, but they might get 1 or 2 nuggets out of this that they didn't know, or at least an on the boots boots on the ground type perspective. So feel free to share this. Thanks everybody for watching this, whether it's on YouTube, Rumble, whether it's on your favorite audio podcast that you're listening to. And until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?